So I got a really good question from a subscriber the other day about asking about if there was such thing as too much float in your cleats. So I thought we'd address that today. But first, what we need to do is kind of define a little bit what float is. So let's do that first. So when we are clipped into our shoes, and here I'm just clipped into a standard SPD pedal on a mountain bike shoe. When we're clipped in, there's a degree of freedom that we have to be able to kind of twist the foot. Essentially, we're pivoting on the cleat, or on the pedal through the cleat, and the heel is able to kind of swing back and forth slightly. And if we look at it, you can kind of see in this end how the pedal can sort of, or the cleat can sort of move inside the pedal. Now, the movement isn't all unrestricted, and it's also not equal. It's a lot easier to the middle here. It's almost like a little bit of play in there. And then as we get further out, there's a little more resistance to it. So while this has this much movement, it's not all the same as far as ease of movement. And it's going to depend how much float you have, will depend on what type of pedal you have, and even to some extent what kind of cleat. These are, again, standard SPDs. These have 6 degrees of float in them. There are some you can get with up to 7, 8, or 9, somewhere in that range. And most pedals have anywhere from 4 to 9 degrees. That's the most common, especially road pedals. What will often determine it, though, is the cleat that you have. For instance, this is a road SPD pedal. This is an SPD SL pedal, cleat, I should say. And these are sort of the standard that come with the shoes. These have 6 degrees of float. Look has a very similar, similar setup where the ones, the grays that usually come with the cleats or with the shoes are 6, but you can get up to 9, I believe, which are the red, and then you can order black in Looks, and they are 0 degrees. There's actually no float built into those. So the amount of motion you have will kind of be determined by the pedal you have, and then also the type of cleat. So now it brings us back to our original question: how much float is necessary? In my experience, the 5 to 9 degrees or 4 to 9 degrees, whatever, that most pedals include is generally enough for just about everybody, or most people anyway. I've yet to see somebody that is actively pedaling with 20 degrees of motion that they're moving through with their cleat on the pedal, moving 20 full degrees. And I think where this question first stemmed was from someone using what are called Speedplay pedals or Speedplay cleats. So this is a Speedplay pedal, pretty typical. It's just a lollipop design is what they call it, where there's no moving parts on the pedal. The actual engagement mechanism is on the cleat, where we have this little spring that engages with the grooves here on the side of the pedal. These pedals have upwards of 30 degrees of float, and some of them you can limit it down and adjust it, but they are very free floating, and I'm sure that that's where this question has come from. And so basically asking, is this necessary for most people? And to kind of reiterate, going back to what I just said, for most people, probably not. And so here's what I've experienced. This is not a scientific study of any sort, but in my experience, I've been doing this a little while. I would say for about 70% of the population, these pedals, they don't, there's no problem with them either way. They're fine. People ride them and they ride, it's perfectly fine. There's not issues with them, good or bad. For about 10 to 15% of the population, somewhere in that's gonna, again, very rough numbers. These pedals and the float that they allow, the unrestricted float, and the motion that they do allow is very free. Many people relate to feeling like you're on ice, like the heel can really move easily. And for about 10 to 15% of the population, this actually helps quite a bit. It helps relieve some problem. It can be a back pain or a hip problem, or most commonly we see is with somebody having some knee discomfort. I've had these people in and we've tested them, and they're still only using maybe 6, 7 degrees at the most of the available 30 degrees of float, let's say. So why would this help? Well, I think some of it is the unrestricted nature of the movement, and the fact that they can have that 6 degrees anywhere they want in the full 30 range that the cleat allows. But I think the unrestricted motion is kind of the biggest factor. And it's not so much about what it's relieving at the foot. It has more to do with what it's doing up the chain. And because when we pedal, we have a lot of rotation that occurs in the transverse plane. So there's, the tibia has to actually twist in. Now it's called tibial torsion. It has to rotate, and also the hip. So I believe these people often are benefited because they have some restriction, and most of the time this is the case. I think they are restricted up the chain. So these tend to be people that are maybe can be very strong, but also very tight, very restricted, not great range of motion per se, and they benefit from this freedom of movement at the pedal, which kind of allows some of the movement that they need through the knee or through the hip, wherever. These pedals are interesting because they also they're the only pedal that in my experience that allows a different type of movement. And what it is it's kind of hard to visualize, but imagine if we're clipped in here, and obviously this is allowed to rotate that way. These cleats, especially as they wear even moderately, they actually have a motion in them, and I use this term a lot, I know, but it is sort of like a pronation type of motion. What these cleats will do is they will allow the cleat to move in this sort of lateral motion and tip out. So the result of that is when you're clipped, so this is a right shoe, when we're clipped in, it does allow the float, but it also allows this little bit of movement like that. I don't really have a good name for the movement, but this movement itself may actually also be relieving, so that's a possibility. And again, I think the people that benefit from this are often the ones that are just, many times they are just restricted up the chain somewhere. They have some tightness. So now we've talked about how for 70% of the population, these pedals are fine, nothing positive or negative. Maybe 10 to 15%, they really help. They really can relieve problem. Unfortunately, any type of attributes often that can really help one population can often really hurt another population. That's no exception here. These pedals, probably about an equal percentage as the numbers that they help, about 10 to 15% or so. These pedals really can create problems for some people. And a lot of times it has to do, in my experience, it has to do with because of this unrestricted motion that's occurring, that there's no limitation, there's less control, I should say, of some of the ancillary motions through the pedal stroke. And these are the people, as you might imagine, they're kind of the opposite of the ones that these pedals help. They're people that tend to be maybe very flexible, maybe people who benefit from increased stability through the pedal stroke at least. And again, the unrestricted nature of the movement with these can really create problems. They don't have the stability now, and so they get motion where they shouldn't have it, or motion that is not in the right plane, or is going to create some sort of irritation or issue. So you need to be careful with these too. Again, it has equal ability to help and to hurt, especially when we're talking about something with as much motion as these can have anyway. And this is not to knock Speedplay pedals in any way. If you look at the numbers, that means that roughly 80–85% of people, they do great for. There's no problem. So this is definitely not a knock on them, that's for sure. But again, goes back to the fact that for most people, a standard pedal that has anywhere from 4 to maybe 10 degrees, 9 degrees of float is going to be perfectly fine. I have a lot of clients come in every year and they ask that based on they've been having a new knee pain or a new something's going on, and they're just on the cusp of buying a new set of pedals, and we test them and they're only using 3 degrees of float, and it has you know, so their problem is elsewhere, or maybe we need to just adjust the cleats that they're currently in. So there you go. There's an answer. Can there be such a thing as too much float? Absolutely. You know, some people will definitely need more stability, more control through their pedal stroke, and would benefit probably from you know, a different pedal like a Look or a SPD SL or something like that, or a Time. So if you have any questions on this, don't hesitate to put them in the comments below. I will get to those as soon as I can. And again, if you have any suggestions for a topic, please list them there, or head over to my website, bikefitadvisor.com. And while you're there, you can sign up as a member for free. I'll put a link in the description below. Members get access to exclusive content. There's actually right now the third part of a kind of a DIY bike fit series on there, how to kind of go through a complete video bike fit. So you can check that out. And that's all for now. I'll see you next time. Thanks.